Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. So after a long break, we will continue our classes on React. So in this class, we will just revise and remember those concepts which we discussed earlier. So let me start the server. You remember what React is, right? What is React? Okay, yeah, it's a library or framework, both are fine. So right now I started the server, okay, npm run start. And I think we discussed some concepts, right? We discussed about useState, we discussed useEffect. Did we speak useEffect? Okay, can you tell the list of concepts that we discussed, Abdullah? I mean, you sent some notes, right? I'll check that, okay? 1 minute. Okay. Okay. Actually, I'm downloading the document, just 1 minute. Okay, now it's downloaded. npm start, okay. Class 2 installing, okay. Class C props, okay. We spoke about props, React props, components. Okay, then we spoke about okay, not okay. So first we will cover the concept of props, okay. We'll revise that, okay. So what is props? Props are like the data that you can pass from the parent component to the child component, okay. So generally we have the concept of functions, right? In JavaScript we can have functions. So what we do, we give some input to the function, and that function will return you something, right? So like you are giving some input to that function, like likewise, when you have a child component, you can give some data to that, okay? That is called as props. So in this case, we have the app component. You can see my screen, right? Yeah. So in this case, we have app component. This is a parent component. It has one child component called greetings, okay. Yeah, this is a component. Yeah, this is a component. It has its own child component, greetings, okay. Yeah. This is like we can say like that, but this is a HTML component, HTML element, right? So we don't say this is a component. This is a component. As for line number 8, right, this is an HTML tag, that's it. It's okay, it's your wish. If you want to see this as a child as well, no problem. But this is a React component, okay. This greetings is not like HTML, right? There's no such HTML element, right? So this is a React component, okay, child component. Okay, so right now if you see, there is one child component, and currently there are no props, right? Currently it's empty, there are no props here, but we can give props if you want. Like I can pass some data to this greetings component, okay, and that is the props. For example, I can say, so there's some data called, let's say year is equal to 2023. Okay, so there is this variable, some piece of data. Okay, so if I want to share this piece of data with my child component, I can do it by way of props. Okay, so I can say year is equal to year. Okay, I can give any name that I want here. Okay, I can say, for example, data. Okay, so this is a prop, and how can I access this thing from within my child component? By way of this name that I gave here. Okay, so if you go to greetings now, okay, already I gave the prop as data here. Okay, let me change that as props. Okay, so the child component, it gets one argument. Okay, and that will have all the props that you gave there. Okay, so this is an object. Okay, and that will have all the props that you gave here. So currently there is one prop data, so this props is an object that has one field called data. Okay, so if I try to print this, for example, console.log props, let's see what happens. Let me show the console. See, that's an object actually, which has one field called data, which is 2023. Okay, so I can do something here. Year is going to be year is going to be year. Let's say now date is going to be 24/4. Okay, now let's see what happens. If you look at the console now, we have two properties now. One is date, another is year, because we gave two props. Okay, when we use that child component writer, we gave that two props, year and date. So those two things are available as fields inside this object. So whatever props that you give will be stored inside this argument. Okay, and that is an object. So that's why you are seeing two things here. Okay, Tayyib, what about Joy Dafi? Are you in the meet or not? Afi, you are silent. Tayyib, Afi. So you get the you remember the idea, right, Afi? Props. So this is the yes. This is the child component. Yeah, this is the component, right? Why we are saying it's a component? Because we are having the code here, JavaScript code here, and also we are using this useState, set name, and all these things. This is React specific thing, right? So this is a React component. This is not a normal function. If you take a normal JavaScript function, right, we don't do these kind of things, right? We don't do return JSX, and we don't call these things. Okay, useState and all. This is not possible inside a normal JavaScript function. This is only possible inside a React component. Okay, and React components should begin with a capital letter. Okay, that is how it differentiates actually. How does React know that this is a React component and not a normal JavaScript function? Because of this thing, the name here. If you start with a normal G, right, then that won't be a React component. Rather, that will be a normal JavaScript function, and these things will throw error for you. Okay. Let me, for example, do it now. Okay, I change that name to G. Okay, small g, and I am exporting that here. Okay. Now what happens? What I did was I didn't do anything, right? I just changed that capital case, right? I changed that capital G to small g, right? I didn't do anything else, right? So it is throwing error for me. What is it saying? It says React hook useState is called in a function greetings that is neither a React function component nor a custom hook. Okay. So what is it saying is that this useState, right, it is called from within something which is not a React component. See, React hook useState, this useState, okay, is being called in a function called greetings that is neither a React function component, because there are two types of components, right? Function component, class component, right? And there's also something called as a custom hook. Okay, you can just neglect it for the time being. Don't worry about this. but the thing is, you are calling this useState from something which is not a React component. This is not a React component, okay? That is why it's showing you error for you. This greetings is like a normal function, like a normal JavaScript function, okay? And you can't call useState from inside a normal JavaScript function, okay? Type. So how does React know whether that is a normal JavaScript function or a React component? Just by way of this case here, actually. If you begin that with a thing like this, with a capital letter, then if you use it like here, right, then it is a React component, okay? Otherwise it's not, okay? Now you see the error is gone. So this is how React knows, okay? By way of this capital letter, okay? So you should use a capital letter here, G, and when you here you should use like a tag here, okay? So these are two things. If you implement these two things, then React knows that that is a functional component or React component, okay? Otherwise it won't know that it's a component, okay? So the two things are, the first thing is you should use like tag here, okay, and that as well it should be a capital letter, and in the definition as well that should be a capital letter, okay? No, which place? I don't know, there may be some other conventions in some other places, but as far as React components are concerned, right, they should begin with capital letter, okay? Type. So these are props, okay? So props are what? Props are like the data that you pass from parent to child, okay? So here I am passing two values, one is year and another is date. Those two values will be available inside this props object, okay? And I can use it inside my child component, okay? That's the first thing. The second thing is the special thing about the props is that whenever the prop changes, the child component will re-render, okay? Right? So whenever the prop changes, the child component will re-render. So I showed it by way of a timer, right? So I kept some timer, and after some time the value will change, and we saw that it got updated here, right? So this entire component rerun, and that is why you can see the change in the UI, right? So whenever the props changes, the child component will rerun, okay? That's the second thing. The third thing is that you should not mutate props. Mutating means you can't directly edit it actually, okay? If you edit directly, right, then it will cause problems for you. Either it will cause error for you, or it won't re-render, so issues will come, okay? So you should not mutate props, okay? So this is about props. Then we spoke about what? We spoke about useState, right? So useState is very similar to props actually, except that it is something, it is some piece of data that is contained within the component itself. Okay. So here if you see, we have a piece of data called name, and that name is contained within the component itself, right? See, it is contained here actually. But if you look at the props, right, it is coming from the parent. It is also data which is coming from parent, but state is something which is local, like it's not coming from parent, rather it is in the component itself, okay? So it is very similar to props in the sense that if that value changes, the component will re-render, okay? And it's also very similar to props in the sense that we can't change it directly, rather you have to use a special function here. This is set name, so you have to use this function to change the value. So whenever if you want to change the value or update the value, you can't do it directly. You can't just say name is equal to something else. No, you can't do like that. Rather you have to use this special function, okay? So whenever you call useState, okay, you have to pass the initial value there, and it will give you an array as output, and the first element of that array is the value. The second element is a function using which you can update that value, okay? So this is array destructuring, okay? So whenever you call useState, you have to pass some initial value, and it will give you what? It will give you an array which has two elements. The first element is the value of that state. The second element is the function using which you can update that value. Okay, so you should always use this function only whenever you want to update this. You can't do it directly. If you do it directly, you run into problems. Right? So this is for use state. Okay. So I think this is what we covered, right? As for so we also showed some sort of event handlers, right? For example, we have button here, right? So whenever I click on that button, I want to call this function greet. Okay. So this is something novel, right? Which we did in HTML as well, right? So every element can have the event listeners on click. Likewise, you have, for example, input on change, right? So these are event handlers. Okay. So we may come back to this concept later, like once again, like this we spoke about the form, right? For example, we have an input component here. What we are doing is we are like binding it, right? So what I did first is that I created a variable, state variable called name, okay, and set name, and I am binding that variable with this input element. Okay, see, the value of that input element should be this name. Okay, whatever thing is stored inside that name, that should be the value of this input element. Okay, type, and whenever whenever I want to change, for example, so how this is working, let me show you here. Here I'm able to change, right? So whenever I type something, right, what happens is whenever I type something, this function is being called actually. Handle name change function. Okay, that function is being called, and I am able to get that updated value. Okay, by way of this e.target.value. Okay, and I am setting that updated value as my name here. See, set name. Okay, so this value gets updated, and since I have binded this name with the value property of this input element, it is also changing here actually. Otherwise it won't change. Let me show you. So I'm just going to take this. Okay, let me just take this out. So what I do here is I don't do anything here. Okay, now if you see, whenever the value changes, right, I'm not going to do anything. Okay, I'm just going to return null. So this is not going to do anything, right? So if you see now, if I type, right, nothing happens actually. Why? Why nothing happens? Yeah, see, initially what I did was I kept that value as Vaji here. So since I have binded that variable with the value here, I can see the initial value here. Okay, but if I try to change this, like I'm clicking backspace now, right now I'm typing, there is no change, right? Why there is no change? Because this value is not changing, this name variable is not changing. Only if this name variable change, I'll be able to see the change on my screen actually. Okay, and even though this function is being called actually, like I can do one thing here. Instead of see, let me show you, console.log e.target.value. Okay, now what I'm doing is whenever that change is, right, I'm just going to print that in the console. Okay, now if you see, you can see there's some change happening, right? Whatever key that I pressed, right, that is appearing there, right? If I click backspace, so what's happening is this function is being called actually. Okay, this handling change, so whatever key that I pressed, right, so this function is being called. However, I'm not using the updated value actually, I'm just printing that in the console. Okay, that is why it is not reflecting here, because that value, right, it is being bounded. Okay, it is connected with this variable name. Okay, so as long as that is not changing, you won't see any change here actually. So that is why you have to edit that variable name actually, variable. So whenever this function is called, we will use this special function to update that value of that name. So that value will be updated, and that's why you'll be able to see it here as well. Now you see, right? طيب. So this is how we do in React, okay? So if you want to have input elements, this is what we do it actually. We create a variable, okay? Using that variable, we'll be able to control whatever is the value of that input element. And we have a event listener, change event listener. And in that event listener, we update the value of that, okay? And this approach has a lot of benefits, okay? Inshallah, you will see later, inshallah, when we do some real project, you'll see how convenient this approach is, okay? طيب. So this is event handling, okay? So what we did here is we use useState along with this event handler to create a small greeting component, okay? So I can put my name there, okay? And if I click on greet button, it's going to greet, okay? طيب. Let's have a greeting for Java as well. طيب. So that is useState, okay? Now we will go for useEffect, okay? The third concept, okay, inshallah. Let me just do some clearing zone. So I have cleared it, okay? We have this greeting here, okay? Let me also clear this props here, okay, unnecessarily. So we'll now discuss about useEffect, okay? So there is another hook called, this is a hook, okay? useState is a hook. طيب. One minute. Can you hear now? طيب. So this useState is a hook, okay? Just remember that name, hook. And there are other hooks as well, okay? So there are hooks like a useEffect, okay? Likewise, there's another hook called useRef, okay? Another hook called useContext. So there are lots of other types of hooks as well, okay? And each hook has its own feature of functionality, okay? There are other types of hooks, okay, in React. طيب. So these are like useRef, useContext. We will discuss about those things later. But for the time being, we are going to learn about another hook called useEffect, okay? طيب. So what does useEffect do? So useEffect is like a subscription hook, okay? Or you can say useEffect is like a subscription, okay, subscriber hook, okay? Or it is like a tracking hook. So what is the meaning of that subscription tracking? Like it can subscribe to state or prop changes, okay, or it can subscribe to, or we can say, or it can track state or prop changes. We understand this thing. For example, we have two things, we have props and we have state, right? For example, name is a state variable, right? So what I can do is I can track whenever this changes. So like, for example, I want to do some particular task whenever this name value changes. Okay, I want to do some x, y and z tasks whenever the name changes. So for that purpose what I can do is I can use useEffect. Okay, subscribe means what I can say, like let's say if there's a YouTube channel, right? So what is the meaning that when you subscribe to that? The only difference is that is it like if you subscribe you'll have access to you can see that when you subscribe, when you subscribe you get notification, right? Whenever there's a new content available, if a new video is posted, you'll get some notification, right? Likewise. So what I want to do is whenever the value of this thing changes, I want to get notified. Why do I want to get notified? Because I want to do some specific task whenever that value changes. Okay, for that purpose you can use useEffect. Okay, and the same thing is for what? Same thing is for props as well. Whenever the prop changes, right? Whenever some prop changes, I want to do some specific task. Okay, for that purpose I can use it. Okay, let me show this in action. Okay, now what I will do here is here, right? Here there's a function of greeting, right? So let me bring that up. So there's a function of greeting. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to call this function greeting whenever the name changes. So that is what I want to do. Okay, this is my task, this is my requirement. Okay, whenever this name, which is a state variable, okay, whenever this changes, I want to call this function. Okay, so how can I do that? By using a useEffect. So what I will do is I will come here, useEffect. This is the syntax, okay, for useEffect. So you see here useEffect. So it takes two arguments. Okay, the first argument is a function, the second is an array. Okay, so this function, right, this is what I want to do actually. Whatever task that you want to do, you write inside here. Okay, inside this function. Okay, and this array, right, here you define or you declare those the variables that you want to track or subscribe to. Okay, so I want to subscribe to this name variable, right? So I will put it here like this name. And if there's one more variable, let's say there was something called as age. It's not here right now, but let's say that it's coming from the props. Okay, so I can say props.age. So what this means is that I have subscribed to these two values. Okay, I have subscribed to the name variable. I also subscribe to this props.age. Okay, so whenever these two changes or whenever any one of those two changes, this function will run. Okay, Tayyib Abdullah, are you there? You understand, you get the point, right? Let me show you, inshallah. We'll discuss the doubts later. Okay, so in this case, for example, I'm just going to just subscribe to this name variable here. Okay, so what happens is whenever that name changes, this function will run. Okay, so right now if you see, this function is empty actually, so nothing is going to happen. So if I save this, right, still compiling. Okay, now it's compiled. Okay, now if you see, as I change, right, nothing happens. Okay, and the reason is because there's nothing here. This function is empty actually. But what I said was, whenever that name changes, right, I want to greet, right. This was my requirement, right. So what I'll do is inside that function I'll call this function here. Okay, greet. Now if you see, whenever I make a change, small change, you see it's getting called, right? So what is happening is when I enter some value, you come here, this event listener is being called, right? This handle name change function is being called. What that do? That name change function is going to set the variable here, right? So I'm going to update this name variable here. So this variable will be updated, okay, and since I have subscribed to that variable here, this function will run, okay, and that function, if you see, is calling this greet function, okay, and that greet function came here, it is going to give me that greeting, okay. So this is what's happening actually. That is why whenever I even press one key right, this is happening. So what I have done here, I have subscribed to my name variable, Namakhi. Yeah, you can do it, yeah. You can see, you can put any number of variables that you want here, okay. You can do like let's say name, age, okay, skills, whatever it may be. So whenever any one of those things changes, so this is called as dependency array, okay. This array, right, they say this is called, this second argument is called a dependency array. Why we say that's a dependency array? Because this function will run only when any one of these things changes, okay. Or we can say this function depends upon these variables, okay. If any one of those things changes, this function will run, okay. Any one changes, yeah. If any one of those changes, this entire function will run actually. Okay. So this is useEffect, okay. So what we'll do is we'll stop here today, inshallah, and we'll continue tomorrow, inshallah. So what I request you to do is you go to React documentation page and you read about useEffect, okay. But the thing is, the very basic understanding is that useEffect is a hook using which you can subscribe to state or props, okay. So whenever those things changes, you can do some specific task, okay. And this is very powerful actually. It's a very simple thing, but using this right, using this useState, useEffect, and props right, these are three I'd say very fundamental things actually. Using these things you can do any complex feature actually, okay. These are very small building blocks, just like you have the like building blocks, right, the small children, they have building blocks, right. So it's a very basic small piece, right, but you can combine them, right, to bring any structure that you want, right, any complex thing. Likewise these three things, right, useState, useEffect, likewise props, right, these are very small blocks, and if you combine them by combining them, you can create very complex functionality of features, okay. So we'll stop here, inshallah, okay. And so your homework would be, you should read about React useEffect, inshallah. So you can go to the documentation here. This is legacy writer, so you can go to the new documentation, inshallah, okay, and you read about useEffect, inshallah. So we'll continue tomorrow, okay. So like any question? Abdullah, I think you are about to say something. طيب أخي سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا طيب إن شاء الله سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.